plan on spending these 3 nights of Qadr? Yeah? How much of it do you want to spend reciting the Quran? How much of it do you want to spend reciting Salah? How much of it do you want to spend in private munajat and communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much of it in studying? How much of it in helping others do good, in charity work? Whatever it is, take that time, plan that much. It will show God that this person, this slave of mine, this servant of mine is actually interested in these 3 nights, rather than just coming into it and seeing what it has. If we plan, I think that planning makes a tremendous difference, and inshallah you will notice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then will allow us to fulfill our plan and more, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We recite in dua iftitah every night in the month of Ramadan a very beautiful line that has grabbed my attention. We recite in this dua, Allahumma inna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin karima tu'izzu biha al-islam wa ahla wa tudhillu biha an-nifaqa wa ahla. We say, oh Allah, we desire from you, inna narghabu. Yeah? We deeply, there's this inna again is used for ta'keed, for emphasis. And when you put an emphasis like this, besides a verb which denotes wanting, it adds more emphasis to that want. So he said, Ya Allah, we strongly desire from you a dawla which is karima, a nation which is honored by you, an honorable nation. Yeah? An honorable nation in which we say that those you will give might to those when وَتُعِزُّ بِهَا الْإِسْلَامَ وَأَهْلَ, and you will give might and honor to the inhabitants of Islam, to those who practice Islam, and you will debase or you will lower those who are opposed to you. Right? This honorable state that we are asking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of the reasons why we want our living Imam back. Yeah? This is one of the purposes, that when our living Imam comes back, he is going to establish an honorable state, a state which has been honored and esteemed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now it's very important that we realize that when we talk about an honorable state, we're not talking about an honorable state by through what other people honor it. Yani we're not honored because other people look up to us. We're not honored because other people praise us. Rather, one becomes an honorable state because Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala honors them. Yeah? That's the only way one becomes an honorable state. Yeah? Is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees something magical happening there, sees the ijtihad and the efforts that are being put by a community there, and then He decides to honor it. And in the history of Islam, there have only been 2 times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has fully honored a state or allowed the Islamic State to be honored. At one time it was during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the second time then was during the 4 years, 9 months and 3 days of the Khilafah of our first Imam. Yeah? Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We're just starting, and if the salawats are going to be this low, it's going to be a problem for me. Wallah, yeah? So salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I know it's hard, yeah? Because when you're fasting especially last hour, you don't feel like talking. Yes, you just mouth. And imagine my job now, yeah? I don't feel like talking either, right? So we help each other. We're enjoying the salawat. It will bring energy into me, inshallah, and we'll have a productive lecture. Again, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Only 2 times in the history of Islam has an Islamic state or a state been honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And we say that these were the only two times when they were truly honored, because it was only during these two times when the tenets of Islam were established, when the sunnah of the Prophet was followed, when the seerah of the Prophet was attributed to the lives of human beings, when justice was truly being given out to mankind. Not the way today we see Islamic states like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all of these other countries, when they say we are an Islamic state, but yet you find there is no justice in that state. Yeah, the rich continue to get rich, the poor continue to get poor, and if anyone's going to be convicted of a crime, it is going to be the poor, it's never going to be the rich. Yeah, the rich can get away with anything, right? This is not justice. This is not Islamic justice. In Islamic justice, it doesn't matter if the perpetrator is rich or poor, whatever religion, whatever family they came from, it didn't matter. When they did something wrong, it was necessary that justice be done to that individual. And again, in the Islamic history, this has only happened twice. Yeah, where an honorable state was made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when we think about that, I reflect out loud with you, and as I reflected when I read this line of this dua, Allahumma inna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin karima. You know what my first reaction was? Do we know what we're asking for? Yeah? Are we sure we know what we're asking for? Yeah? And in another word, are we ready for what we are asking for? Yeah? We are asking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our condition, to make our state into an honorable state, the type of which has only been in existence twice before. Yeah? During the time of the Prophet, now when you look at the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, when he established the Islamic State, he was bringing it out of darkness and into light. Yeah? They accepted whatever the Prophet had to say. When the Prophet made ukhuwa and brothers between rich and the poor, they accepted what the Prophet had to say, because they knew this was the only way they escaped the darkness of the jahiliyyah. Yeah? Only way they escaped the pressure and the evil of those who are oppressing them. So they accepted what the Prophet had to say. The second time when an honorable state was established was during the time of the Khilafah of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. It had been Allahumma salli ala Muhammad li Muhammad. It had only been 25 years. Yeah? It had only been 25 years since the Prophet left this world. And when he re-established what the Prophet established, the people turned their back on Amirul Mu'mineen. Yeah? The people could not handle the Islamic state that was established by the Prophet that they lived in, but because 25 years of a different philosophy had crept into their lifestyle, the people couldn't handle the justice of Amirul Mu'mineen. They couldn't handle the Islamic state as brought in by Amirul Mu'mineen. Yeah? And so I ask ourselves, I ask me, yeah, that if the people couldn't handle it after 25 years, what makes us think we can handle it after 1,350 years? Yeah? We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that which has only come twice. First time it was accepted because it was new to them. Second time majority rejected it. Majority rejected it. Yeah? Where there were only a few people who could accept what Imam alayhi salam had to say. And so I ask ourselves this question again. Are we prepared for the justice of the 12th Imam alayhi salam? Yeah? Are we prepared for the Islamic governance of the 12th Imam, which of course will be identical to the governance of his grandfather Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam? Right? And this is a question that we have to reflect upon, that we have to ask ourselves. That how can we then prepare ourselves to be able to handle the governance, the jurisprudence, the governance, I think is the more right word, of our 12th Imam when he comes. Yeah? Because it's going to be drastically different than what we are currently experiencing. It will be, right? Because that type of governance can only be established by a ma'soom. There's no other one who can establish that level of governance, right? We have been fortunate where we have had ulama, yeah, we've had great scholars, we've had great leaders, and they have led us to a path where all we require is an understanding of the type of governance that will come, and then not only an understanding, but then furthermore an acceptance of that type of governance. It is said that when Imam alayhi salam was forced to be the Khalifa, on the very first day, the Imam alayhi salam, he gathered the people together and he said the following: وَاعْلَمُوا أَنِّي إِنْ أَجَبْتُكُمْ رَكِبْتُ بِكُمْ مَا أَعْلَمُ وَلَمْ أُصْغِي إِلَىٰ قَوْلِ الْقَائِلِ وَلَا عَتْبِ الْعَاتِبِ. He says to them, you should know that if I accept your call, because they begged him to be the Khalifa. They begged him. After Uthman and what Uthman did, they begged him. That come and guide us and lead us. The Imam alayhi salam says, you should know that if I respond to you, I would lead you as I know I should lead you, and I will not care for those who blame me or accuse me. I'm going to lead you the way I know it to be right to lead you. Not the way you think it's right that I should lead you. It's very beautiful what the Imam says. Very beautiful. The second day, this was the first day. The second day, the Imam alayhi salam comes to them, and again he says to the people, know that any land that Uthman has granted and any wealth from God's property that he has given as a gift will be refunded back to the public treasury. Now this is the second day. We're talking about him making waves here. Him disrupting a system that had been established. Uthman gave away property, the Muslim property. Uthman gave away large amounts of money that belonged to the Muslim, the Baytul Mal. It belonged to the Muslims. Imam alayhi salam says all of it will be refunded back to the Islamic treasury as nothing. He says, فَإِنَّ الْحَقُّ الْقَدِيمِ لَا يَبْطِلُهُ الشَّيْء. He says because the previous right cannot be changed when you give somebody else a right. So for example, if a property has been stolen, right? Like somebody breaks into my house, steals a laptop, sells it to you for $20. You now possess the laptop, but if the police find out, they'll take that laptop back and bring it to me, even though you paid for it, isn't it? Because the previous right cannot the previous right cannot be altered or broken, isn't it? The Imam alayhi salam says that I will bring back every money that has been illegally used in this land, and I will restore it to the rightful place, even if they were given as a wedding portion to women on their weddings. Even if it was given as a mahar to the wives who are getting married, that money is not theirs, that money will come back to the Islamic State. Subhanallah. Look at what the Imam is trying to establish. Now we have to be careful saying Islamic State. I'll try to use different languages here, but you never know these days. With the media. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So imagine the Imam alayhi salam in 25 years, so much had happened that he was reversing things. That if it this way happened, it was wrong, bring it back. You did it this way, it was wrong, bring it back. And in those 25 years, the people were so established in their way that they could not handle the Imam's justice. They could not handle the Imam's governance. So I ask myself, right, maybe it's not an apt question for all of you, but I think it is for me, that am I really ready for an Islamic governance, the type of which the Imam will bring back, the kind of which the Imams the first Imam established in his time, the kind of which we have not seen again, because they've never been given that authority. So the plan is, inshallah, for tonight and the next 3 lectures that we gather, we're going to be looking at the different reforms that the Imam alayhi salam brought in his government. When the Imam came back, after 25 years, when the Ummah was misguided, and when the Imam alayhi salam came back, he brought about a series of reforms, a series of changes to the Muslim Ummah. And we're going to be looking at about 4 of these changes over the course of this lectures, the next 4 lectures. And we're going to try and see whether or not we can A, accept these reforms, B, adopt these reforms. And if we can accept these reforms and adopt these reforms, it will make it easier when the Imam comes for us to accept whatever the Imam has to come. Yeah? So there is purpose behind us trying to understand these reforms of the Imam. And really they are things that we have heard about the Imam, but you look at it from the perspective of governance, and it changes the way we perceive why the Imam did what he did, right? And it allows us then to understand as well what the 12th Imam will do when he comes. So we look at the different reforms. And today we begin with the first one, and this is what is known as as-siyasatul idariya, where we're going to be looking at the administrative policies of the Imam. Administrative policies, we're talking about how the Imam dealt with the people during his administration, but specifically what he established from an administrative policy. As a manager at a company or an owner at a company, you decide the administrative policies. What is considered late? 15 minutes. Okay, after that, you are late. What is considered dress code? Are you wearing casual, casual, or business? The administrative staff decides the policies of how they interact with the people. You find that the Imam ﷺ changed the administrative policies with the people from what it had been in the past 25 years. In the 25 years prior to that, the policies that were put into place are very similar, if not identical, to the policies we see in existence right now in governments, where the elite class only look after themselves. If you, for example, are related to me, if we somehow know each other, we come from the same background, we come from the same city, you are much more likely to rise in power in my administration than others whom I may not know, right? This type of nepotism that we see everywhere today was fully rampant during the 25 years that the Imam ﷺ's khilafah and his right was taken away from him. The Imam ﷺ came back, and the first policies that he began to establish were the policies of honesty and truthfulness in his affairs with the people. And he would be absolutely forthcoming. What you see is what you get from the Imam. It's not that you see a type of duplicity that we see today. You look at, it was a breath of fresh air, because it was honest, it was truth, but it was honest and truth based on honesty and truth, right? You look at, for example, what's happening in America today, right? The reason why you ask the common person, why do you like Donald Trump, right? And the answer they give is because he is honest, right? That's what they say, because he says it like it is, right? And then you say, okay, and then you look to see what he says, and there's nothing truth in there, There's no truth in there. He just sounds like a common man, right? He sounds like a common man, so you get to believe him because you say, this guy can't be lying. But you investigate the facts, you do a fact check. There is a website called factcheck.com, if I'm not mistaken. And they have done a recent study on Donald Trump's statements, and they found, if I'm not mistaken, again, I'll have to double check, but from what I remember last, 60 to 70% of what he says is lies. Imagine, 60 to 70% of what he says is lies, yet the common person he says it like it is, and that's why we like him. Now, imagine if that's all it takes, right? But the Imam ﷺ was honest, was truthful. He said it like it was, but you would never find a lie in what he said. You would never find discrepancies in what he said. Not only would you not find discrepancies in what he said, you would never find discrepancies in the actions of the Imam. Where today he says, I support this, tomorrow I support this. You wouldn't find that in the Imam, And the reason why this was such a breath of fresh air is because the general tendency of those in power is to keep power in any means necessary, right? It's like that. In any, whether it is in a community or whether, even if it is at a home, right? And where you see, for example, the husband was working at one time, and after the kids grew up or something, the wife begins to work and the husband gets laid off and the wife is now the sole breadwinner of the family, it has brought into that family structure a switch in quote-unquote power roles, in administrative roles. And because of that switch and the lack of ability of the original party who had power to technically let go of that power, if that's what we're going to call it, causes tremendous tension within that marriage. Tremendous tension, right? You look at a friend's circle. Let's say you have a group of 4 or 5, and one always was the center of attention, and then others began to become the center of attention. You see how those friends begin to gossip on each other. You see how those friends begin to talk bad about each other. Why? Because the general human being, an average human being, does not like to let go of that power that they have had. Imam Ali alayhi salam changed all that. He defied them. He said, take this from me, I don't care. But if you want me to govern you, I am going to govern you the way I know it's right for me to govern you, not the way you want me to govern you. That's an amazing, again, it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing. There's a very famous story where Imam alayhi salam was in Kufa and Ibn Abbas walks in and somebody has come to the Imam to judge between two people. And the Imam is sewing his sandals. And he's sewing these sandals. Now this is again the Khalifa, the governor of the time, right? Let's put aside the Imam. We've established that he was always the Imam, right? But now he's the governor. And this is how maybe the awam would look at it. But he's the governor and he's mending his own shoes, right? And Ibn Abbas says, put that down. You people are waiting for you to go govern them, right? Go govern them. The Imam alayhi salam just ignores him. And he continues to tie his shoelaces. Then he puts that down. And he says, Ibn Abbas, how much are these shoes worth? And he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's like, the response was almost like, why are you asking me such a question? The Imam says, tell me. He says, less than half a dirham. It is worth less than half a dirham. Imam alayhi salam says, this khilafah is worth even less than these shoes to me. And I don't care for it. I don't care for it. At any time you ask me to leave, I will leave. But if you're going to ask me to govern you, it's going to be based on how I feel it is right, and how the Imam felt it was right was how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it to be. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we could just have the people move over, please, so that not everyone's trekking across. If we can just recite 3 loud salawats and if people can stand up and move. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ya Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And it's not that, Ahsan, if the people in the gym come in, it's nice for me. It's not that Imam alayhi salam could not be treacherous. It's not that Imam alayhi salam could not be conniving the way all other politicians were, and all the way politicians are. It's not that the Imam alayhi salam could not be duplicitous in his actions and in his statements. He says in a tradition, this is very beautiful what he says. He says, Wallahi, ma Muawiyatu bi adha minni. He says, I swear to God, I swear by God, that Muawiyah is not more conniving than I am. Look at what he says, we think that Imam alayhi salam could not be conniving because he's the Imam. No, right? No, it's not true. He says, look, Muawiyah, wallahi ma Muawiyatu bi adha minni. That Muawiyah is not more conniving than I am. وَلَكِنَّهُ يَعْدِرُ وَيَفْجُرُ. However, he practices deception and commits debauchery. He begins to change the system. He says, by God, وَلَوْلَا كَرَاهِيَةُ الْغَدْرِ لَكُنْتُ مِنْ أَدْهَى النَّاسِ. He says, by God, if I didn't know that Allah despises debauchery, I swear to God, I would be worse than Muawiyah. Is it debauchery? Is that why you're laughing? Sure. There's a grammar police here. Yes. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But imagine, Imam says that if I didn't know, he's like, I know how much God despises hideousness, right? How much He despises this treachery. He's like, if God did not do that, he's like, by God, lakuntu min adhana, I would be the most conniving of people. I would be. These are surprising words from the Imam. And so what it shows us, remember yesterday we were talking about the ulul albab. And the ulul albab, those who possess intellect, know the right way from the wrong way, but even the wrong way seems interesting to them. They are attracted to the wrong way, but they're able to fight that off and go on the right way. The Imam shows his humanistic side here. And he says that, look, I can see that there is benefits to being treacherous. There is benefit to being conniving. But because God has said it is haram, I will never be conniving. Rather, I will always practice this justice. And this is where the Imam's justice then is understood. His administrative policies become clearer to us, that his administrative policies are not based on his own whims and desires. They are not based on what would be best for his own family. It is based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. And this is the line of the Imam alayhi salam that he has drawn. Imam alayhi salam in his letters to Malik, we have to inshallah one day investigate and go through this sermon of this letter. The letter that he wrote to Malik-i-Ashtar, it is considered the longest letter in Nahjul Balagha, in which he describes how one should administer. I think anybody who wants to run for anything, whether it is Jamaat work, business work, you want to run for the youth committee, you have to read the letter of Malik-i-Ashtar that was written to him. It shows you how one should govern, how one should look after people. Imam alayhi salam says, وَأَلْزِمِ الْحَقِّ, impose that which is haqq. In whatever you do, impose that which is haqq. Man lazimahu, on whoever it is incumbent upon. Whoever requires imposement of haqq, impose it on them, right? Whoever it has come upon. Min al-qaribi wal-ba'idi wa kun fi dhalika sabiran muhtasiban. Whether those people are related to you or they are not related to you, impose the right on them. When it is necessary to impose haqq, impose haqq, regardless of who that haqq is on. We've heard stories about his brother Aqil coming, isn't it? Right? And Aqil asks for something from Baytul Mal and says, give me these, right? And Imam Ali alayhi salam takes an iron which has been sitting on the skillet or on the fire, and he brings it next to Aqil. And Aqil moves back from that. And he says, why are you doing this? He says, Aqil, you move back from this fire which is worldly, and you want me to go towards the fire which is ukhrawi? The justice of Imam alayhi salam did not see family. He did not see race. He did not see the Quraysh, the tribes, nothing. Imam alayhi salam saw it as God's rights. And whoever imposes God's rights will be the ones who are successful. I'll give one more story and then we take a lesson from this. This story is about a poet by the name of Najashi. Najashi was the poet of Imam alayhi salam in the battle of Siffin. And he came from a tribe called Tareq Bin Abdullah, from the tribe of Nahdi. He came from the tribe of Nahdi. If I'm not mistaken, this is in the Yemeni area, but he was a poet and he was Imam's personal poet in the Battle of Siffin. Najashi was arrested for drinking alcohol in Kufa. This was a person who praised Imam. He glorified Imam's status. Imam alayhi salam took Najashi and carried out the hudud on Najashi for being caught drunk. Right? There are penalties in Islam. And again, these penalties can only fully be enforced by an Islamic state when all principles of the Islamic state are established, right? This is something very important for us to realize, that when people say, oh, you love Sharia law, you Muslims, yeah, and that you want to establish Sharia law in Canada, and you want to establish Sharia law in the United States. Sharia law is what? Sharia law is a law that can only be established when all spheres of Sharia are being practiced. Yeah? So if there is not justice being practiced in a society, Sharia law technically cannot be practiced and today or established. And therefore today there is no state in which Sharia law can fully be established. Right? And so it's a fallacy for them to argue this way, to try and again do fear-mongering and hatred in people that these Muslims are so terrible. Najashi was punished. And because of Najashi's punishment, you know what he did? He joined Muawiyah. Yeah? Because he thought he was the jigri dost of the Imam. Yeah? He thought he was this with the Imam, like this with the Imam. Yeah, I'm the poet of the Imam. Right? Imam would not do this to me. Imam would not harm me. I may have done something wrong, but Imam would not carry out the punishment on me. Imam carried out the punishment on him. He joined Muawiyah, and his entire tribe joined Muawiyah. Why? Because they could not handle the justice of Imam. Yeah? It is said that the brother of Najashi, or a tribesman of Najashi by the name of Tareq Bin Abdullah, comes and meets the Imam alayhi salam. And he says to him the following, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I did not imagine that the sinners and the obedient, the separatists and the allies are equal before the leaders of justice. I didn't realize this, yeah? That according to you, there is no difference between a believer and a non-believer, a loyalist and a separatist. You don't seem to differentiate anybody because of this. He's like, and I thought that, I never imagined this until I saw your treatment of my brother Najashi. Yeah, I said, I never thought that you would do this until I saw your treatment to my brother Najashi. He says to him, and this is it's lovely, it's tragic, but it's lovely at the same time. He says, فَأَوْغَرْتَ سُدُورَنَا وَشَتَّتَ أُمُورَنَا وَحَمَّلَتْنَا عَلَى الْجَادَّةِ الَّتِي كُنَّا نَرَى أَنَّ السَّبِيلَ مَنْ رَكِبَهَا النَّارِ. Yeah? He says to him, O Imam, you pained our hearts by what you did. Yeah? Imam he carried out justice. Yeah? The people couldn't handle it. And they imagined the Imam to do something else than what he did. Again, what he did was justice. And I can't emphasize that enough. You know, if for example, I trust you and then you do something to violate that trust which is anti-Islamic, that should break my heart. My heart should not break when you establish justice. Yeah? He says to the Imam, you pained our hearts, you dispersed our affairs and brought us along a road about which we previously thought that whoever would take would go to the fire of Jahannam, and now we're on that same road, O Imam. Yeah? Yani before we thought whoever joins Muawiyah is going to Jahannam. He says, but now you left us no choice but to go down that road because of what you did. Yeah? They felt offended. Yeah? They felt offended at what the Imam did. And again, what did the Imam do? Ahsant, establish justice. Yeah? The Imam responds back to him and he says, فَقَالَ عَلِيٌّ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِينَ. Yeah? He quotes a verse of the Quran. He says, this is indeed hard to accept, except for those who are humble. Yeah? It is hard. Yeah? The Imam even says, it is hard for you to accept this. Yeah? And it is hard for anyone. God says it is hard for anyone to accept this, except if they are humble. We come back with what we have to realize, right? That when the Imam comes, there is not going to be this favoritism that exists within the Imam. Yeah? The Imam's not going to say, okay, you're a Sayyid, yeah, you're with me. Yeah? The Imam's not going to say, oh, you're Khoja, oh, mashallah, mashallah. Yeah? Oh, you are Iraqi, oh, mashallah, come, you're Iraq. No, Imam's not going to care about none of that. Yeah? The Imam's going to establish the rule of God. Yeah? The Imam's going to establish the justice of God. That if this is right, we're going to do it. If this is wrong, we're not going to do it. And there is going to be the majority who will not be able to handle the justice of the Imam. We always hear that people will turn away from the Imam. How is it that they will turn away from the Imam? Because they will not be able to handle the justice of the Imam. Yeah? The Imam's establishment of the truth, yeah, will be so firm, yeah, will be so steadfast that majority of the people will say, no, this is not right. I should be honored more than this. Yeah? I should be respected more than this. My right is more than this. Yeah? What I want is more than this. And the Imam alayhi salam is going to firmly establish this. How can we get to the station, right, where I accept what the Imam is going to do? See, we have theoretically understood the administrative policy of the Imam, right? How do I practically accept it? You know, the only way for me to practically accept this justice and then implement it and then be ready for that justice is if I implement that very form of justice in my own life today. Yeah? Where my line that I draw is the line of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? That's it. Right? The boundary that I live by and how I interact with my family, how I interact with my community, how I interact with the society is based on the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not on the rights of human beings, right? Because the rights of human beings are constantly changing, right? The rights of human beings are constantly shifting, while the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are never shifting. Yeah? They are firm. We had this discussion when we had a youth group last weekend, and we asked ourselves, are we Canadian Muslim or are we Muslim Canadians? Right? And some said it doesn't matter, it's just linguistics, it's just a hyphenation. Some says it does matter. I'm of the belief that whatever you identify yourself with more, yeah, whatever principles you will allow yourself to be governed by is what you call yourself first. Yeah? If you're going to allow the Canadian morality to govern you, then you're a Canadian Muslim. Yeah? But if you're going to allow the Islamic identity to govern your actions, then you're a Muslim Canadian. And if you're a Muslim Canadian, then you will know how to behave in every situation. From the Orlando shooting, you will know what to do, how to behave and how to respond. Yeah? You will know that when your family member, for example, has a wedding, and that wedding has a mixed gathering, you say to yourself and you weigh to yourself, do I offend my family or do I offend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yeah? And it becomes very clear, yeah, that if you want to accept the justice of the Imam when that Imam comes, there is no doubt, yeah, who you're more worried about offending. And if we can begin to practice this, right, you will notice that you yourself are getting ready and preparing for the Imam. This is how we prepare practically for the Imam. Yeah? By establishing the system that the first Imam established. But my brothers and sisters, yeah, when you begin to practice this, be ready. Yeah? Be ready. Because people will turn their backs on you. Yeah? People will criticize you the way they criticize Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yeah? People will turn their backs on you the way people turn their backs on Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yeah? People will call you all sorts of names the way they called Amir al-Mu'mineen all sorts of names. But it didn't matter to him, did it? Yeah? Because to him it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It was an evening like this, the 19th night of Shahru Ramadan. History tells us that Imam alayhi salam on this night had iftar at his daughter's house, Kulthum. Some say that Kulthum alayhi salam, as she brought the food for her father, she brought 3 things on the table. The Imam alayhi salam looked at his daughter and said, Ya bunayya, when have you ever seen your father have such a meal for iftar? Yeah. Take back one thing, take back one thing. They just said that she wanted to take the dates back. He said, no, take the milk back. This is too extravagant for me. Ya Amir al-Mu'minin. Yeah. Kulthum alayhi salam says that my father had his iftar and then he recited his nawafil and his du'as, and time again he would go outside and he would look at the sky and he would say, hiya wallahi allati, hiya wallahi al-laylati allati wa'adaniha habibi Rasulullah. He says, by God, this is that night that my Habib Rasulullah told me about. But he didn't tell his family what that night was about. But he would constantly recite this. This is that night that was promised to me by Rasulullah. It is said the Imam alayhi salam after that laid down. He fell asleep and in his dreams he saw Rasulullah. He saw rows and rows of angels behind him. And the Prophet says to him, Ya Abul Hasan, innaka qadimun ilayna an qareeb. He says, Oh Abul Hasan, you are approaching us and coming to us soon. Wa ana wallahi mushtaquna ilayk. He says, Oh Ali, I am longing to be with you, my Habib. I look forward to being with you, O Ali. The beloveds are meeting each other very soon. The Imam alayhi salam, upon hearing this message from the Prophet, he called his children, he called his family, he informed them that this is that night that the Prophet had told him about, when the worst of creations will strike him on the head. He says, this is what Allah has ordained. Imam alayhi salam, it is said, spent the entire night in ibadat. The Imam alayhi salam spent the entire night in ibadat and in worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is said constantly, Kulthum says that I could hear my father constantly repeating, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. To Allah we are from and to Him we will return. There is no power save the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the time of Fajr came close, the Imam alayhi salam asked his daughter for a jug of water. The Imam did his wudu. It is said, Kulthum, narrator says to her father, Ya Abata, don't go today. Don't go to the masjid today. But the Imam alayhi salam says, it is my duty to go to the masjid. It is my duty as the leader to go and lead salah. The Imam alayhi salam begins to exit his house. It is narrated and reported that everything begins to do salam to the Imam. The trees give their last salam. The animals give their last salam. The leaves and the grasses give their last salam. The Imam alayhi salam goes to the mosque of Kufa. He recites his Salatul Layl and Nawafil. And then it is time for the adhan. The Imam alayhi salam on this occasion stands up and begins to give the adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The people of Kufa don't realize, but this is the last adhan they will hear of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam alayhi salam gives the adhan, and then he goes and begins to wake up those who are sleeping still in the mosque of Kufa. He comes and he wakes up one, and then he wakes up another, and then he sees one who is sleeping on his stomach. The Imam alayhi salam comes to him and he says, Waylak, don't you know this is a sleep that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despises? If you were to sleep, فَنِمْ عَلَى يَمِينِكَ فَإِنَّهَا نَوْمَةُ الْعُلَمَاءِ وَعَلَى يَسَارِكَ فَإِنَّهَا نَوْمُ الْحُكَمَاءِ. He says, if you're going to sleep, then sleep on your right, for that is how ulama sleep. Or sleep on your left, for that is how hukama sleep. But do not sleep on your stomach. We say to Amir al-Mu'mineen, we know well enough, you know what that mal'oon is hiding under his stomach. For that is Ibn Muljim, and under his stomach is the sword that will strike Imam alayhi salam. The Imam gives the iqama, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ. The Imam begins his salah with the takbir, Allahu Akbar. The Imam goes into ruku. The Imam stands up, Sami Allahu liman hamida. The Imam goes into sajda. As soon as the Imam was about to raise his head from sajda, oh lovers of Ali, this is not easy to tell, this is not easy to hear. As the Imam was raising his head from sajda, the mal'oon struck down with the full force on the head of the Imam. Wa madluma, wa imama. Immediately the Imam alayhi salam said, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah fuztu wa rabbil Kaaba. By the name of Allah, indeed I have become successful. It is said immediately the doors of the mosque begin to get open, the clouds begin to gather, the voice of Jibreel is heard from the skies. Tahaddamat wallahi arkan al-huda wa antamasat wallahi nujumus sama. Qutila ibn ammi Muhammadin al-Mustafa, qutila al-wasi al-mujtaba, qutila Ali المرتضى قتله أشقى الأشقياء. Hassan and Hussein rush to the proximity of their father. Imam al-Hassan places the head of his father on his lap. Blood is streaming from the head of Ali. He sees the tears of Hassan and Hussein. He says to them, my children, do not cry. Do not cry, by God, for what you are about to face very soon is far more difficult. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Matam ya Hussein.